This is January the 7th, 2021. This is American history. We learned yesterday about pools. Now, a pool is a business practice where the price, supply, and market are determined by a group of like businesses who voluntarily align. Now, the key word to write into your notes is the term voluntary. And this is one of the greatest problems of a pool. Pools tend to break down very quickly because people just don't want to follow the rules. They want to make money. Soon we see the development of a holding company. Now, a holding company is where a large corporation will create a much larger corporation on paper. And then this larger corporation will buy up the rivals. This way, the rivals can be dictated by the larger corporation what they can and cannot do. Now, this only works if you have a large corporation that can dominate smaller corporations. But what happens if most of the corporations are about the same size, have about the same wealth? Then we have to go to a trust. Now, a trust is where a new corporation is created and the various existing corporations buy into the new corporation. The more stock you can buy, the more say you have in the new corporation. The new corporation is going to set supplies, set territories, and set prices. Now, this here is a video about the railroad company trust. Trusts are legally binding. Each member of the trust has to sign a document, and if anybody from the trust decides not to go along with the rulings of the trust, then that person can be fined. We're going to start looking at some individuals from the Gilded Age who are going to make a great deal of money. For the most part, they are going to form their own trust. The first one is John Rockefeller. John Rockefeller was from Ohio. Now, you may not realize it, but Ohio has a lot of oil. And Rockefeller is going to start what he calls the Standard Oil Company. In time, the Standard Oil Company will own all the other oil companies in the United States and many abroad. Here's a video about Rockefeller. Another one of these trust barons is James J. Hill. This is him in the photograph. James J. Hill is going to form what is called the Great Northern Railroad. This is a railroad that starts in Minneapolis and ends in Seattle. It is one of the transcontinental railroads that we talked about earlier this week. Leland Stanford is the owner of the Union Pacific. Now, in time, Leland Stanford will buy out the Central Pacific to own the very first transcontinental railroad. Stanford was concerned that the engineers who he used to build his railroad were not up to snuff. And so in the 1880s, Stanford is going to begin his own engineering school, which today we call Stanford University. Stanford University is one of the finest schools in the world, if not the finest school in the United States. So what exactly are an advantage of a corporation? Why would a person want to form a corporation? Well, first of all, if something bad happens and you want to take the corporation to court, the only thing you can sue the corporation is its value. And typically the corporation does not have a lot of value. It has a lot of stock, but it does not have a lot of value. Can you sue the stockholders? No, you cannot. Now, an advantage of corporations today in 2021 is that as an individual, you can form a corporation. If your parents are doctors or lawyers or veterinarians, if they own a small business, I will bet my bottom dollar that they have probably incorporated themselves. To build the railroads, we need steel. And in the 1870s, a British invention called the Bessemer process is going to make steel cheaply. Now, what you do in the Bessemer process is you take molten iron and you inject into it carbon. Now, the easiest way to do this is by putting in coal or charcoal briquettes. The man who brought the Bessemer process to the United States was Andrew Carnegie. Now, Carnegie originally was part of a railroad, and by the time of the American Revolution, pretty much owned the railroad lock, stock, and barrel. But he believed that the railroad would eventually go bust if he did not also control steel. And so Carnegie began Carnegie Steel, which by the end of the Gilded Age was the largest steel company in the world. Under Hayes, the Republican Congress is going to turn away from Reconstruction, and they are going to look for a way to make the world better business-wise. A pro-business atmosphere is going to go through Congress and the presidency until the end of the 19th century or the 1800s. And because everybody is promoting business, this is going to cause a great deal of cash to be brought into the United States. Now, when we speak of cash, we normally speak of J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan was a banker, and through his efforts, he's going to create the Chase Manhattan Bank. Whether you like it or not, or know it or not, most banks in the United States are owned by Chase Manhattan. Another trust baron is going to be Gustavus Swift and Philip Armour. Now, Swift and Armour are meat packers. Now, the problem is, how do we get fresh meat from where it's butchered to where the market is back east? Swift is going to create specialized rail cars. He's going to butcher the beef and pigs in Chicago. Then he's going to put their carcasses in rail cars that have been refrigerated with ice. This way the meat does not spoil. Armour is going to take meat and he's going to put it into cans, and then he's going to bake the cans with steam, and this will allow the meat to stay fresh until the can is open. Now, probably the most important one that we are going to worry about is Adolphus Busch. Adolphus Busch is from St. Louis, Missouri. And Adolphus Busch is going to come up with a way to pasteurize beer. Now, the problem with beer is you have to keep it cold. And if it gets warm, it spoils. Busch is able to pasteurize beer, so even when it is warm, it does not spoil. Now, to keep it from losing its fizz, Busch is going to invent the bottle cap. This is a video about Anheuser-Busch. We're going to end today with Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison is the most prolific inventor in American history. His inventions were created during the Gilded Age. He is going to invent the light bulb. He is going to invent the stock ticker. He is going to create the movie camera. Now, again, this is where I think we probably need to stop.